teaches Sean about his brain. The podcast where I, Sean, embark on a journey to understand what's happening in my own head. Spoiler alert, I have no clue, but that's precisely why we're here. In each episode, I explore questions about the brain that I believe will resonate with all of us. Like, why can't I turn my brain off at 3 a.m.? Why my memory only works when it feels like it? And why my brain seems to betray me when I need it most. Listen, I'm not a scientist. I'm no expert. I'm just a guy looking to unravel the mysteries of my own mind. Fortunately, I happen to know a cognitive neuroscientist who is an expert in the brain, and I get to ask him all the questions I want. So, if you're curious, confused, or simply along for the ride, welcome. And hey, if you like what you hear, don't forget to like, follow, subscribe to the podcast, or whatever it is you do wherever you listen to podcasts. I don't know how the algorithms work. I just know that your support keeps this journey moving forward. And together, we might just discover something remarkable. This is John Teaches Sean about his brain. Let's get started. Hi, John. It's good to see you.
Hey, Sean. Good seeing you.
What is on your mind this week?
Well, I would like to talk about something we have talked so much about already, but I'm going to talk about it again.
Okay.
Because you said you like saying this word, that it's a fun word to say. I want to bring up schemas again.
Schemas? Oh, wow. Okay. Schemas. Hit me with it.
So I was reading, Oren sent me something he's writing to read over the weekend, just to read and give him some thoughts. And he talked in there about, part of it was about schemas, not the whole thing, but he mentioned schemas. And he brought up some research, some ideas, really, philosophical ideas by Michael Graziano, who's a psychologist and neuroscientist that does research and came up with the schema theory. And I'd read it, I'd seen it before, but hadn't read it real deeply. So when the way Oren brought it up and talked about it, I thought, man, that's really fascinating. I want to read about it and see what it says. And so I did some more reading about it. And I just wanted to share it with you briefly. I don't have a, like, I agree or don't agree with it type thing. It's more just really interesting to think about. So,
Okay.
You know, from all of our conversations, I don't think I've said this before, but this is another way to think of schemas. They simplify our world. So they take this complex world we have and make it pretty simple so that we know what to expect within it. And so they make a lot of assumptions, but it's a simplified version of the world that our mind gets. These schemas give our mind so that we can understand things quickly. And I guess as I was thinking about that, just right before we got on this to start the podcast, I was thinking about a research study I used to tell students about, where researchers took a picture of office on campus of a graduate student's, a teaching assistantship's office, so they took a couple or three pictures and they set them up. They put certain things in the pictures, and then they would let students look at the pictures and then ask them questions about the pictures. And they were able to give false memories and lack of memory of items based on what schemas people had. So for one group, like for the same picture, one group, they said, this is a biology student's office. So take a look, and then we're going to ask you some questions to check your memory. And so, like, one of the questions would be, was there a poster of the human body on the wall? And a lot of people said yes. I think over half of them said yes when there wasn't one, but that fit the schema of a biology student. Was there a globe on a shelf? And they would go, no, when there was, but because that didn't fit. So they were able to, and then they would say, you know, this is a history TA's office, and they would have different assumptions. So it's just a way to quickly, schemas also tell us what we should pay attention to, type of thing. So Graziano's idea is that consciousness is the result of an attention schema. So when we pay attention to something, we have a schema of what that means to pay attention, and it means to be aware of certain things. And the schema, the attentional schema makes us aware that we're aware of that schema, which gives us that feeling of conscious awareness and self-consciousness. So I just thought that was really fascinating, since I had not tied that into schemas before. And I thought that would be something good to kind of tie everything back in, since our listeners have been learning a lot about schemas, to say, some people even think that that's where conscious awareness comes from. Our consciousness is an awareness of our attention schema.
So I have a schema for paying attention, right?
Yes, that's right. Yep.
And so I'm thinking back, like my earliest, and not specific recollection, but right, like I'm in school and being told by a teacher, pay attention, and whatever that means to me. I'm being told that enough. I'm being told by a parent or an adult or whatever, hey, pay attention.
Yep.
Pay attention to the movie. Pay attention to whatever's happening. And that, through all those experiences, I'm building a schema for paying attention.
Yes. Yeah.
Am I on the right track here? And so that, go ahead.
Yeah. And I was going to say, it's all of our schemas help us fit into, like, going into a restaurant. You have the restaurant schema, but then that kind of drives you or pushes you into paying attention to certain things in the restaurant, because now that feeds information into your attention schema, so that you know what you should be paying attention to in the restaurant.
Can you give me an example?
So now you're aware of being in that restaurant, paying attention to things. And that's
right, like a menu, or like
you would look for, like, as you walk in, you're immediately like one of the things you might pay attention to is just to get a quick glance to see, where are the tables? Is there a bar at one end? Are there people sitting around a bar? Like, just to orient yourself to a restaurant. Like, if it's not a fast food restaurant, if it's a nicer restaurant, you kind of orient yourself and you go, oh, I see the layout. That means, and then you probably can just guess where the kitchen is and where the restrooms are and all of that. Just by getting that, you kind of, your schemas about a restaurant kind of force your attention to understand the layout of the restaurant. And that's your attention schema, gathering that type of information, which you become aware of.
But there, and I don't know if this is even part of this topic, but I think about, there are people that I know, people in the world that, I don't want to say they don't have that schema, but maybe it's underdeveloped. Those same people walk into a restaurant and just seem to be oblivious to the things going on around them. Do you know what I'm kind of referencing?
Yes. Yep.
And so is that an ill-formed attention schema for them, or is there something deeper that they're just oblivious?
Yeah, well, obliviousness is lack of attention.
Right.
So you're not attending to the things you should. You're just kind of oblivious to things going on. And that can be for a lot of reasons. So it might be that, people who are, you think of them as daydreamers, they're in their head a lot. And, that's lacking attention. So they might be oblivious to things going on. Other people, there's so much going on. It's all competing. They can't tease it out. So it looks like they're not really paying attention, but they're just, ADHD, they might be paying attention. So many things are trying to get their attention. Yeah. So there's different reasons of why. So those would also, I think, play a role into how oblivious somebody seemed. There's, other things like that might play into it. And it also could play into it that they haven't really developed that schema.
Yeah. And I mean, quite literally, we walk up to the podium at a restaurant, and then they ask how many. I say 4, and then they say, okay, follow me. And 3 of us start to walk, and there's a person behind us that doesn't even really realize, it seems to me, that they don't even realize we walked away. And I think that most people would probably imagine somebody on their phone or whatever, but I'm saying they're not on their phone. they're not there with us. They're standing right there and we're gone. And they're like, where'd everybody go? And that's an extreme example, but that has happened to me with people in my life where they just aren't, that's what I'm saying, not paying attention. And I'm always fascinated by, there's always a scale, right? Like, because I think that, and I think I know the answer to this, but you can, no matter what stage of life you're in, you can improve that attention schema if you just attend to it, right? If you,
and also know that schemas aren't correct or incorrect. And it's not that they have a better schema or a worse schema. It's just a schema is your brain's representation of your experiences with stuff.
right.
So I wouldn't say that one schema is wrong and the other one's right, but it's, if they've made it through life by they're thinking about something, or they're seeing something in the wall, or maybe they're looking at the architecture, something draws their attention and somebody has to tug on their sleeve and say, hey, we're going to our seat. They go, okay, and go to the seat. That worked out for them. They were still able to eat dinner with everybody.
Yeah.
So their brains might not feel the need to improve, so to speak, their attention schema. I mean, they still have self-awareness, and that's the idea that whatever your attention schema is what gives you self-awareness. So I don't think that if you're more situationally aware, it means that you have, well, I don't know, maybe it does mean that you're a little bit more, have a little bit more self-conscious awareness. So maybe it is more consciousness. I don't know. Conscious and non-conscious, we've used them on this podcast a lot to frame, what we're talking about. But we call them the on channel and back channel really for a reason, is because I don't want to get into all the details and nuances of all the different levels of consciousness, because it's not just there is consciousness and then there's there's so many layers. And so self-consciousness, like aware that I'm a person, I'm right here, is one layer of that. But there's other parts of conscious awareness that doesn't relate to that at all. So it's really hard to get into all the different layers. It's easier when you're talking about the brain and how it works, just say, hey, there's an on channel and a back channel, just to kind of make that generalization so that we can discuss a lot of things without getting bogged down in all the different layers of consciousness.
And let's not forget the whole point of this podcast is Sean is trying to learn about his brain. If we go down the road, you already lost me. So I think that, again, to your point, is if we tried to get into the nuance of all that, you would be looking at an empty screen where it says Sean, there'd be an empty chair there.
Nobody's there.
I'd be gone. I'd just get up and leave. So I appreciate keeping it at the level that we are. And if I start to kind of drag us down, you got to just say, hey, be careful what you wish for, Sean.
Yeah.
Well, you're not going to get what you want out of this one.
And I don't fully understand conscious and non-conscious processes and all scientists still debate where the breaking points are and what's what. And that's after studying it for years and reading and studying it. It's still not clear, but the on channel and back channel are clear in my mind.
Oh, good. Well, let's just stick with because again, you don't want to be that. Yeah, let's not look at an empty chair over here on the Sean side. Okay.
So what was on my mind was just another way to think about schemas. That there's an attention schema, and that attention schema might be what gives us an awareness of us being an individual self. Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe you said this before and it just didn't hit with me, but something you said about schemas is an overall collection of experiences that set up a filter, so to speak, but just a way for me to make sense of the world really quickly. And so even though all of these, schemas might have names and descriptions, every individual, because no two individuals experience the same thing. I mean, we talked about me sitting next to you and still experiencing different things. So the schemas we're building are very specific to each individual.
Absolutely.
And that's the part that I continue to kind of go, that's the really interesting part for me is going back to having empathy for others and understanding a little bit more about the people around me in the world is
Mm-hmm.
like everybody has different experiences. Those experiences construct these schemas, and the schemas are the way that we quickly make sense of the world. So
Yep.
that part's interesting to me. We can just keep it at that level. But
All right, good.
that also kind of plays into what I wanted to ask you about today. Is we've talked about this several times, but I still find myself coming back to it about decision making. Number one, we use that term a lot, decision making. I use it a lot, and making decisions and all that. And I think that what I've learned from you just over the past 10, 11 episodes or whatever we're at right now is that term is too loose to describe what we're trying to say. It's me and I had a decision to make, so I did this thing. But I found from you that a large percentage of things I do are not conscious decisions that I make. They're back channel processes. They're run through all these, and it's like, did you really decide that? In the sense that you're trying to say you made a decision. And so when I was thinking about decisions being made consciously versus in the back channel just driving my day. And we have touched on heuristics before, but the idea of how there's so many heuristics in the back channel, and how a lot of those are what drive my decisions. I'm putting air quotes around decisions. And we've talked about some of the heuristics, but I think I'll say all of that to say, can you talk a little bit about context and why context matters in heuristics that play into decision making?
Yes, because heuristics, like you said, are in the back channel. They're rules of thumb, and they're really labels that we've given certain things to try to describe what the brain's doing. But your brain isn't saying which heuristic should I use today. It's just trying to help make the quick decision to move on, because you're, just to keep things rolling and make the best decision possible for you. So the context matters, because if you're at work, you might have certain heuristics that help you make a decision. If you're on social media, there might be some others that are more likely to pop up to help you understand something. If you're trying to decide whether to try something new, like whether it's a food or whether it's try a new, like ride a zip line for the first time or something, your heuristics come up for those decisions. It's just those gut feelings, those quick decisions that you make. And so it's like I guess no matter what you're doing, any heuristic anything that scientists have found to describe how the brain works could be used, but it seems like some are used more in certain contexts than others.
Yeah. So let's stick with that. I like what you just said. So let's say work, social media, and with a group of friends. Just take those three contexts.
Okay.
And I'm assuming that there's probably crossover. There's heuristics that I might use for a group of friends and at work.
Absolutely.
But I might be asking the wrong question as usual, but are there specific heuristics that go, let's take work. I want to stick to the three contexts, but at work, is there maybe a heuristic that plays into decisions at work that you generally wouldn't use elsewhere? Say with a group of friends or on social media, or does it not work that way?
I don't think it works that way. I think so. I know what you're getting at. Well, I think I know what you're getting at.
Yeah, don't be too sure. I'm not even sure I know what I'm getting at.
I think I know what you're saying. So at work, you are usually showing off your abilities to do something, or your knowledge to complete something, or something like that. And so there's a chance of overestimating your abilities and your knowledge level to take on a project or something. Like, we need to have this certain I can take that on. because that seems easy. I already know this field or whatever. And then you get into it and you've overestimated, what you could do. And that's called the overconfidence bias or the overconfidence heuristic, where you're overconfident in your abilities. So that might be one example from work, the
But how,
overconfidence.
as a heuristic though, how does that get not built, but where does that come from? I'm at work. I've done the job for long enough. I where's that come from?
Yeah, we just have a tendency to think that we can do stuff and that we're better at stuff than we are. I mean, everybody has this tendency. I mean, there was a poll, I can't remember who took it, but somebody asked, I don't know, like thousands of drivers here in the US just to rate themselves. Are you an average driver, above average, or below average? And it was like 84% said they were above average, which doesn't fit the definition of average.
Right.
I mean,
Mathematically, that doesn't work.
mathematically, you can't do that.
Right. Right.
So it's just everybody thinks they're better drivers than they are. I mean, obviously, there are some drivers that are above average, but not 84% are above average, because then that's a new average. So you've got to readjust the scale. So that it's helpful at times to have that, because that, like at work, you might take on a project that you normally, if you were very accurate at judging your abilities to do things, then there would probably be a few things you would do and a bunch of things you wouldn't do. So this might encourage you to kind of stretch the limits a little bit and try yourself out, which can be a good thing.
Yeah. If I am actually pretty self-aware at work, and my boss comes and says, I need you to take on this project, and I go, I don't know if I have the skill to take that on, as opposed to somebody who might be a little overconfident, and they go, yeah, I can get that done, no problem, even if because I don't remember if you've said, have you ever worked in an office before? Like, I know you've been in at academia and stuff like that, but
I sort of. I mean,
okay.
my brother-in-law and I owned a business where we sold plumbing and parts and kitchens and baths and things like that. So,
Okay.
kind of an office setting there, maybe.
I was asking that question to say, I think if you have worked, like if you've seen the movie The Office, which is pretty close to a documentary, right? If you've ever worked in in an office building like that, but working with someone who thinks they know better than everybody in the business, right? Like they're the only. What's that?
Dwight and Michael.
Yeah, both different, but yes. I mean, to the degree that they're like, I am the only one that can handle this problem because everyone else is not dumb, but they just don't know what I know. Yeah. They're just not as good as I am. And that's part of that overconfidence bias, where they just are so wildly overconfident in their skills and abilities.
And that's not always good. No. So it's not good to be too overconfident like that. And like somebody might say, oh, like investing looks simple. I'm going to start my own account. I'm not going to go through. I'm going to start my own account and start investing money in different things. Then you're really confident what you can do. And then you start losing money. It's like, oh my goodness, the investments tank or whatever. And you're like, man, that in that situation, overconfidence isn't good. I mean, in health and relationships, it can be good to a degree, but then if you go a little too far, if you're too overconfident, it can have negative effects. So
yeah. If I'm too overconfident in my abilities to fist fight, my nights at the bar might be rough. I'm probably not going to be going to the bar too many Saturday nights. But
yeah, that's.
I'm not. That's making light of something that I find fascinating, because there's always different personality. Like, in The Office, the TV show, I think that they do a good job of like hitting all the personalities that I've worked with in an office before.
Yes.
And in the movie Office Space, same thing. But all of that, like, there's that person who, whether they've been doing it long enough or they just are so overconfident that they know better than everybody. And
What gives them that confidence?
That's my question.
How can
Where's
somebody
that come
be so
from?
confident when they're so bad at something and everybody knows it but them, and they think they're so good at it?
Yes, that's what I'm asking. That's how is that possible?
Their back channel just feels like it can do things, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, okay.
Not much self-awareness, maybe.
So we have at work and
Mm-hmm.
this idea of overconfidence bias, where I can
Mm-hmm.
do things well above my, and then now I can't let that one go. And then let's see, the boss comes to me and says, "Can you get this done?" And my overconfidence bias and my back channel, without even thinking, I go, "Yep, I can do that. I can do that this week." And then just heaven forbid that I actually get it done for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm.
I get it done. That then strengthens that bias.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
So a series of fortunate events in this case that leads me to I'm overconfident I get something done. Well, maybe I'm not overconfident if I keep getting it done though. I
If you
just
keep
talk
getting it
myself in a
done, that's,
circle. Maybe it's
yeah,
true. I am that good.
yeah.
And I don't
And
mean me. I have
then
a
you'll
picture of somebody in the office that I'm talking about, but
then you're more likely to stretch even further. And I can go, I could do that twice this week. I could
okay.
do 2 projects this week.
Yes. Yeah.
Eventually
Okay.
you're going to hit a point where you don't get it done and you fail. So you might pull back a little bit, especially if you're self-aware. You go, wow, I overestimated that. And also what fits into this is, people have expectations. You don't want to disappoint people. So now it's
Hmm.
like, I've got to say, yes, I can do it, because they'll be disappointed if I say I can't. So that could play a role in it too, of others' expectations in, what you're in getting something done.
Yeah. And then if you don't want to look bad to other
Yeah.
people, around other people, okay, that okay, that's a pretty good explanation of what's going on. But you said if they were self-aware, but if the more self-aware you are, is it safe to say the less likely you would suffer from overconfidence bias?
I don't know that that's true. I
No.
think that you would regauge your expectations faster, maybe. But I think we all fall prey to this overconfidence bias in whatever we're doing. Like,
Yeah.
because it's not always about just a project. You either get it done or you don't. It's also like driving, as an example. Like, even if I have a wreck, it was the other person's fault. I still feel like I'm pretty good at driving. So, and I can be really self aware and maybe think, yeah, I'm not maybe that much above average, but I'm better than the average person at driving. So there, and then you have to, you're looking for ways to confirm it or disconfirm. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I
So
think
then
everybody can be prey to that. Yeah.
we can come back to the work context, since I set up this like false context here. But what
Yeah.
about social media then?
Okay.
And some heuristics that might be different from work. You know,
Um,
are
I
there any?
think, yeah, I think there's a couple
Oh,
that play into this. I think there's one that's like, it's the bandwagon effect. It's kind of known as the social proof heuristic or the bandwagon effect, and that's the tendency to do what others are doing or to agree with what most people agree with. So there
okay.
was a research study where they put, I think, like 8 people in a room or something like that. 7 of them were Confederates, meaning they were in on the research project, so they knew, but they showed up in the hallway with the 8th person. They were all waiting to go in and participate in this experiment. So to the one person that was the actual participant, it seemed like they were one of 8. So they would go into a room, and then the researcher would walk in and ask them some questions about things, and they had them vote on kind of right and wrong answers. And most of the things they voted on were pretty obviously either right or wrong. There wasn't like a lot of gray areas. It was something that's right or wrong. And then they would have people vote for the correct answer. And if the group was divided between the right and the wrong answer, then the actual participant would vote for the right answer almost every time. But if the 7 or 8 Confederates all
I can
voted for the
see where
wrong
this is
answer,
going. Mm-hmm.
then the person that came in as a participant would also raise their hand for the wrong answer, because they felt, I mean, there's a lot of reasons they might do that. It might be that these people know something I don't know. Like, this seems too obvious, so I'm obviously missing something. If they all think it's one way, it probably is. But it's also that thing of, I don't want to be the one person that, they might all turn and look at me and go like, what? So I'm just going to join in so that I don't stand out, so to speak. So that's to just kind of join in with the group.
So if, again, I just kind of summarize what I heard you say is if a group of 8, if they were split on an answer, then the person invariably was going to vote the right, what they knew was the right answer.
Yes.
But if and I know this wasn't the research, I'm saying for Sean's brain, if the researcher, the person up front says 2 + 2 is 5, and 7 people all go, yep, that's right. And I'm the 8th person going, that's not right. Okay, that was a trick question, or whatever it is in my head that I make it okay to go, yes, I agree, that's right. And I know you said there's a lot of different reasons why, whether it be tribalism or whatever the reason is, something in me goes, I don't want to be the one person that disagrees with these 7 people that I came into this room with, that, right, like all of those factors.
And if I'm wrong with everybody else. We're all wrong together. So kind of like in classrooms, you don't want to be, if everybody flunks an exam, you don't want to be the one person that passed it. You know what I mean? Because then everybody hates you for that. So you'd almost rather, you don't know it till afterwards. I'm just saying
No.
that
I understand your point, though.
I flunked it, but so did everybody else. I don't feel bad about myself. So it's kind of, it might be something like that as well.
So,
but it's just
now,
it's just the tendency to go along with the group and just agree with the group. It's easier to agree with the group, because if I don't, I have to take a stand. I have to answer questions. I have to defend my position. It's easier just to go with the group. And it also, if you go with the group, you get positive feedback usually, right?
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, way to go, buddy. You're one of us.
Wow. So that plays into, I could take this in so many different directions, but the idea of courage, sometimes courage is not putting your hand up and being like, no, that's wrong. And I know it's wrong. And I'm going to be, which is I'm making it sound way easier than it is. If I put most people listening to this podcast in a classroom with 8 other people, most people that I know, not a dig on anybody, are going to put their hand up for the reasons you've just described. But now take that to social media.
Some people are just disruptors. And even if the 7 raise their hand to the right answer, they'd be the one to go, nope, I'm going to vote wrong, just because that's my personality. I want to argue. I want to stand out, type of thing.
Oh, yeah. So now go to social media, though, which, part of social media, the algorithms involved, I don't care for the most part. And I don't get a penny from, but even Blue Sky, I would even argue Blue Sky, all of it is just the algorithms keep pushing me things that I want to see and that I agree with for the most part. Now I'm in this echo chamber. Now add on this idea of this bandwagon idea. And how easy it is for me now to start like just falling in with this crowd.
And then you start, it's easier. There's a post that goes out and it's got 50K likes.
Yeah.
Going, okay, then I'm going to agree with. I'm not even going to do my research on that. that must be right.
And I know there's more heuristics involved in this, but they're saying something I agree with. They're saying something I probably already to some degree believe.
Which confirmation bias,
and then
heuristic.
And there's enough of them involved, this social proof. So you just start adding all of these things together. Now I just agree with it. I don't have to do research, like you just said.
Yeah,
and now I'll repost it.
And now you repost it, and then you can also think of like the authority heuristic, which means we have a tendency to believe and obey those in authority over others. So now if somebody important posts something in social media, then we're really behind it because they are an authority figure in that way. They have a certain number of followers or whatever. So now that gives them more clout, more authority. So we are more likely to agree with them or comply with them. Do you remember the
It's just
Stanford prison experiment?
I do remember it. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And okay, so that wasn't social proof. That was authority
That's
because
the
the person
authority
was telling
heuristic.
them to shock
Yeah.
the.
Yeah. In that experiment, they had people come in and there was a person there in a lab coat and a clipboard. And they explained to them this dial is a shock dial. We're testing memory. We're seeing if we can strengthen memory with by shocking people. And you're like, what? And so, yeah, this is the experiment. And you can't see the other person. They're on the other side of the wall, but you can hear them.
And they're screaming when you
And so
shock them.
they ask them a question. They get it wrong and say, go ahead and give them the shock. And they shock and they'll go, because it starts low.
Yeah,
And they'll say something, you like shock them. They'll go, and then you say, turn it up a little bit. And then they start going, ow, and it gets hard to where they're like screaming and begging and people are still shocking them. And then people come out of it saying, that was horrific. I hated to be a part of that. I was like, well, why did you keep shocking them? You didn't have to. There's nobody, like, you could have just got up and said, hey, I'm done. I'm out of here. And some did, but most people just kept, because the person in the lab coat and the clipboard would say, shock them one more time. They would go, okay. And so that's the authority heuristic that you're more
because
likely.
Someone in a lab coat was telling them to do it.
Yeah, because they obviously know what they're doing. They're the researcher. I'm going to follow what they say.
Yeah.
Even though you're just feeling horrible about it.
Did I mess that up? The research you're describing, that's not the Stanford prison one, right?
Oh, I'm sorry. No,
so
that was not.
I did that. I mixed up two. So it's still pertinent here because I want to go back to Stanford, but
I think I said it wrong. Yeah, but go ahead.
Well, okay, because this might be wrong, because the Stanford prison experiment, wasn't that where they took a bunch of college kids, put them in prison, and made some of them guards and some of them prisoners, and within a shocking amount of time, meaning not much time, the guards who were not but I mean the students who were the guards started displaying horrible behavior towards the prisoners. The prisoners started acting like actual prisoners. That's the Stanford prisoner.
It is
research, right? Okay.
That was Philip Zimbardo who was the researcher on that one.
Okay, and fascinating study, but different, right?
Well, but it is different, but it's the same idea about the authority heuristic, because that was, people were given authority, and so others would start doing what they said, but those who had authority started abusing others, and because that's also kind of the other side of it. People in authority tend to abuse their authority at some point. So
power corrupts.
But
then, so even though I might not be able to come up with the name of the other research, the one you're talking about, but the idea that so it was really just simple. It's just when I say to shock them, but I guess, they're a researcher. The authority part, just someone in a lab coat standing there with a clipboard. I guess what you're saying is that represents enough authority for a majority of the people in that research to shock another human being to the point of, and you said it, if I remember right, they were quite literally begging them not to shock, not to push
the person on the other side was going, please stop, like crying out.
Yeah.
And I just remember that's the Stanley Milgram study, not the Stanford prison. It's the Stanley Milgram experiment.
That's pretty close. That's really close. But, and again, you said Stanford and I went to the other one. So I think you and I both just kind of messed that one up. But still, the point still remains is that that's enough authority shown in research that just a person in a white coat and a clipboard can get people under the guise of this authority heuristic to push that button.
Yeah. And yes. And in other conditions, they wouldn't. Like if somebody's begging them, I'm not going to keep shocking. I mean, if it's somebody like them, who's another participant saying, shock them again, like, no way. Like, I'm not going to do that. But an authority said it.
But if they just said, hey, you can shock them or not shock them as much as you want,
Yeah.
and there's nothing else, like this research wouldn't even be noteworthy, I
No, and you
think, because
probably,
we
most people, there would
would not
probably
do
be
it.
1 out of 20 people would start shocking, but most people go, I don't even want to shock them once. Like,
Right.
I don't like
Yeah.
getting shocked and I don't want to shock anybody else, but they were a part of the experiment. And it started out like they would go, and you go, that's, but you don't feel bad about it until you
Hmm.
keep turning the dial up further and further and they're screaming. Then you're like, yeah, at some point, like, why am I still doing this?
And I wonder about, and I don't know that there's any way to know, but the after effects of the participants in that research, like just I think that would make me feel and how I would carry that.
Yeah, I don't think you can replicate that study nowadays. I don't think that
Mm.
would pass a board. I wouldn't think so. I would hope
Oh,
not.
but you said in the end though that there's usually a debrief of the project, right?
There is, but I still think that study, I know the Stanford prison
Prison
study would
one.
not be used. You can't do that one again.
No.
So I don't know about, I don't think the Milgram study would be done again either. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a
But
lot of the studies that were done,
in the
back.
post research part of it, I, as a participant, would be told afterward that I wasn't really shocking the person.
And they were all told that
Yeah, that's what I mean. Is so
afterwards. Yeah.
afterwards, walking away, there's still probably a little scar on my brain,
Hmm.
having gone
Hmm.
through the incident, but
Yeah, because it's highly
afterwards,
emotional.
yes, yeah,
And then you say, just kidding. It really didn't have an effect. You're like, I just had a lot of an emotional reaction to that. So, yeah.
yeah, yeah. Okay, that's a good one. So we have work. We did one. Social
Hmm.
media. We did one. What about
We
group of
did a couple
friends?
social media.
Wait, what were? Remind me.
The
Social media.
We did the social proof, which is like bandwagon,
Bandwagon.
and then we did
Okay.
the authority.
Authority. Really funny because both of those, there several episodes again or ago, when you had a bee in your bonnet, you were talking about a doctor on social media, so authority,
Hmm.
MD,
Hmm.
who has however many followers, bandwagon.
Hmm.
So now I see why you were so upset. And now I understood in that episode, but boy, now I really understand what's going on there.
You know what? Ever since that episode, I've felt a little bit bad because I talked specifically about the Dunning-Kruger effect, and that,
Yeah.
which has been kind of disproven, but I really should have said that Daniel Dunning, the researcher, is highly respected and he's done tremendous work. And he's the one that basically the other parts of his studies and of his research were that, we feel more confident in the things that we don't know than the things we do, which still is an actual effect.
Yeah,
It's
what we
just
were
that.
using, here's what's interesting though, the way I used it, not saying it's right, but Dunning-Kruger, I'm feeling like is more closely aligned or is actually overconfidence bias.
No, it's kind of the opposite.
Meaning,
Well, okay, I see what you're saying. That No, I think they're different because a lot of some of Dunning's research was showing that if you know a lot about something, then you realize there's so much more to know. And if you don't know very much, then you think you have a pretty good grasp on the whole picture of whatever it is. But overconfidence is more about, even on the stuff that I know about, I still think that I can. It's not overconfidence in my knowledge. It's usually overconfidence in my ability to deal with
yeah,
something. Yeah.
yeah.
So I think those
I
are
keep
different.
saying skill and ability, but I see what your point is.
They're a little
Uh,
bit different. But
yeah,
anyway, that's
yeah.
just, I don't want to go back to however far, but just I've kind of felt bad
I don't
about
like
that.
that you felt bad. That I don't like that.
Well, I try to every time point out, like this effect is bad, but our brain, if it was just bad, our brain would stop doing it. It also has good things to it as well. So I like to point out the good and the benefits as well as when it causes problems. And with research, there are some good things. Sometimes some negative things come out of it, but that teaches us even more. So there's usually good that comes out of it. So I didn't want to leave it as, and I did leave it as kind of a down tone on it. And just because there was a bee in
Oh,
my
okay.
bonnet and I was frustrated with all of these people out there who are scientists, especially, and I think I also probably came across a little hard on bro scientists. I didn't want to do that. It's the scientists and people in healthcare that I was really frustrated at and still am. But you can go listen to that episode if you want to hear it again. If the listener wants to hear that, then go listen.
Interesting, because I have said this. I've gone on record. I will go on record again that one thing of the many things I appreciate about you and what you have to say is that you always try to tie all this information into something positive about the brain, right? Like something good. But I have not pushed you, but I have really tried to make this podcast about trying to help people in their everyday life.
Mm-hmm.
So, and really just help me. If I can understand my brain, I can live, in my estimation, a better life.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I think those two things butt up against each other, where Professor John is trying to teach me about my brain and things to watch out for, things to safeguard, understand these things. Maybe sometimes you can't find the positive note in there where you're trying to help me manage my social media, usage or beliefs or whatever. And I think the good news, here's the good part for you, is I think that those instances are very few and far between, that there's not a space where you can do both. Teach me about my brain, make it positive about the brain, and also help me safeguard. I mean, really, what you're trying to do is protect me from myself. And I know that. But I still appreciate you always trying to find that positive spot for me. So,
yeah, that was a kind spin. Thank you for that.
Oh, no. Okay, so now I'm a group of friends.
Yeah, so this is, this, I thought of one for friends, but this could also work for work.
And that's fine.
But it's called the halo effect.
Okay.
And that's where how we feel about one aspect of something influences how we feel about the whole part of it. So like an example would be, if you see somebody that you think is physically attractive, then you automatically assume something about the whole person, not just their physical attractiveness. So now you think they're also probably clever and intelligent and really kind and fun to be around. That kind of all gets lumped in together. And so I was thinking that also fits with jobs, because people that are attractive, like tall and handsome for men, attractive for women, have a better chance at getting a job during an interview. Because
I've heard getting promoted, like all those things, just based on I've always, because I don't know how to say it, but I'm tall. I wouldn't say attractive, but tall, and I'm a bigger guy. And so when I see studies like that, and there's so many of them, like more likely to get a job, more likely to get promoted, more likely for people to listen to me, even though they know I'm a dum-dum. But there's something about like a big guy, that I don't know what it is, but
maybe you should stand up for these podcasts. So we can get more
that would be better. Yeah.
Yeah.
Stand up so that people might think at least that I know what I'm talking about. But
that's all true. And that people have those feelings because of the halo effect. Like if there's something about you that's really good in this one area, that probably means you just kind of assume all areas are good. And then the opposite of this is called the horn effect. And that's where you don't give the benefit of the doubt. If somebody's not very attractive, you think they're probably stupid and boring and smell bad and all these other things that go with it. That just is a quick assumption that you make about that.
Your brain does that in the snap of a finger.
Just a split second. You don't even have to consciously try to process that. You just get that gut feeling about that person.
I don't trust them. They don't know what they're talking about.
No.
And that's why we have models and beautiful people selling stuff on. So this last weekend, I had a group of friends over, and she will not be named, but she knows who she is. We were watching TV, and Pedro Pascal comes on the TV. Beautiful human being, and he comes on and we all stopped and looked at the TV, and I said, "What's this for?" And she said, "I don't care what it's
doesn't
for.
matter.
I will buy it. I'll buy it." So
Yeah.
and it was,
Marketing people aren't stupid.
they're not dumb. They paid him enough
They've
money
heard
to
of
get
the
on TV
halo effect. Yeah.
because, a whole bunch of people are going to buy AirPods now because he was on a commercial wearing AirPods.
Yeah, that's funny, but it does work for brands as well, and it's like if you like one brand, like if you've had success with one brand, you're more likely to choose it later. So let's say that you've worked with tools and you like Black & Decker, and if you've really worked with tools, you probably don't like Black & Decker, but let's just say you do. You've had good success with Black & Decker, that makes you more likely to buy a Black & Decker coffee maker. Just because that's
the brand.
The brand is so Black & Decker always works pretty good. I see a coffee maker that's Black & Decker. I think I'll use that too. And it's like they started building tools. Now you get that because of the halo effect. They were good at building tools. They're probably good at doing everything. And so then a brand can build up currency based on the halo effect. So now if you get a Black & Decker coffee maker and it doesn't work for some reason, you usually give Black & Decker the benefit of the doubt and try it again, or try something else they do, unless they keep screwing up. But it's like building goodwill with the halo effect, where if you try a new brand you never tried before and it breaks, you're like, I'll never try that brand again. That's the horn effect.
But even to say, I like what you just said is I have Black & Decker for all my tools. And there's a Black & Decker coffee maker. So I love these tools, so it's got to be good. But somewhere in my conscious brain going, just because they make good tools doesn't mean that they know anything about coffee makers. But we don't do that. To your point, it's just like, oh, Black & Decker, I recognize that brand, and I like all their other stuff, so I'm going to buy this coffee maker.
Absolute brand recognition, like, oh, that's probably good. So you just buy it without reading anything about it or reading reviews. You're just like, oh, Black & Decker, I can trust them. So you grab it. So you attach the halo or the horn to the brand you judge it based on that rather than whether it's really good or not. And that's what we do with people too. Just the minute we see somebody, they either have a halo or horns, and then it attaches everything. So now we're judging them based on the halo characteristics or the horn characteristics, not as an individual. They get categorized one way or the other rather than their true qualities. Because that's so much simpler. That's easy just to make that quick leap and that snap judgment.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. And I didn't think about, probably somewhere I did, about that brand recognition, but that's people get a brand or whatever. You know what? And we were, to some degree, my wife and I were just talking about this, about, not me, but people are like, my dad drove a Ford truck. His dad drove a Ford truck. I drive a Ford truck. Yeah. It's like, well, what about Ford? Well, it's a good product or whatever. It's like, so kind of just maybe not a heuristic, but to some degree is like, I'm familiar with this. It's what, my dad drove, his dad drove, and that's what I'm going to drive.
I'm a Chevy man.
No, I shouldn't have brought up Ford. Sorry. And that's another one. But that's funny because there's people who, they're Chevy people and who have stickers on their Chevy that say Ford, found on road dead, or Dodge. All of that is like, come on, like, what is the difference between these three trucks? A Ram, a Chevy, and a Ford, minus like some proprietary little things maybe. What's the difference?
Status.
That was rhetorical.
For you, but other people look down on you for having one because they're the other. Like, you have a Ford, Chevys are better, and then somebody else like, I got a Dodge. What are you guys talking about? Yeah.
I drive a Ford truck right now, but I've driven all of them, and I just have a Ford now because it's the one that I bought. It's not for any other reason. I guess I have no brand loyalty. That's the,
I guess not, but we pick things and then tend to stick with them.
Yeah.
Through thick and thin.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. So let me go back. Cause I just, as usual, took us all over the place.
We've done, but
we started with work, right? And you were specific about overconfidence. Um, and then social media, we actually got two. So I don't
Mm-hmm.
remember the bandwagon real name, but I like
It
bandwagon.
was okay.
Social proof,
Social proof. Yeah.
social proof, and authority,
40. Mm-hmm.
heuristic,
Mm-hmm.
where someone in authority tells us to do something or says something, we tend to believe it. And if I could pause on that for one last thought, I'm thinking about your boss says something, and your boss is a tall, somewhat attractive, and I hate to say it, but man. And I'm only saying hate to say it because, like, this idea of like tall, good-looking man with authority, we're more likely to believe that person.
Mm-hmm.
Is what you're saying about a halo effect too.
Yep. Yep.
So if you could compound like several of those,
You
we're
almost
more
always
likely
can. You
just to
almost always
go,
can. Mm-hmm.
yep, yeah, I agree. Yep, what he said.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
Okay.
you're
Don't love
almost
that,
you
but
almost always can combine several heuristics or
mhm.
explain something with multiple heuristics. There's overlap, and there's one one thing that happens might, for one person might be caused by one thing, and another thing. So it's hard to tease them all out. It's just interesting to
Yeah.
learn about them and know how they can affect how we behave and act.
Yeah. And I don't want to, we try not to make this show political or too, but my wife's screaming about the patriarchy every day. There might be something to that. So,
Yeah, there might
um,
be.
the tall, attractive man is more likely to get hired, more likely to get promoted. But then when I'm sitting there and he's talking, I'm like, I believe everything this dude's saying.
Yeah,
And he
yeah,
might be just a crackpot.
that's you mentioned earlier, if we have just a little bit of self-awareness, maybe that's a good time that all of us can start using it, is learning about this. And just like when you hear somebody talk about the patriarchy, go, instead of arguing it, think about it and
Yeah.
have some self-awareness and go, that does kind of fit what generally happens, since all the research is showing it happens, and people who are not part of the patriarchy feel it every day, then maybe there is something to it.
Maybe there's something to it. I knew there was something to it.
I know you did.
I'm not just, but anytime that there's science involved, then I'm kind of like, oh, dang it, she's right. Even though I represent the patriarchy. And then in the friendship group circle, or just in social settings,
Mm-hmm.
and even outside of that, because I feel like when you talked about the halo and the horn effect,
Mm-hmm.
that's way broader
Yeah.
than just that.
Mm-hmm.
Did we talk about another one in social, or was it halo?
No, it was. Oh, you mean with friends? I think it was
Yeah,
just Halo. I think.
yeah, I think so. Yeah, and then
There's
pay attractive people to hawk your products, and people will buy
There you
them.
go.
That's,
Yep.
you
Yeah.
know,
And then there's one more that I think would fit kind of within that. Although, again, with all of these, we can think of examples from the three different categories probably. But the framing effect, which
what's
is,
that?
well, it's how you set up a problem. Like if you're talking to friends and you want them to agree with you, like if you have a bee in your bonnet and you're wanting them to agree with you, you can, depending on how you state the problem, you can either be more likely to get them to agree with you or disagree with you. And that's called the framing effect. It's how you present information is going to
Okay,
kind of determine how people respond to it.
how I frame it to you can affect how you respond to it.
Yeah. So, and research has shown this. So I'll start with the research, but they, had people rate how good a drug was, an effect of a drug, and they would say things like, this drug helped 70% of the people that took it feel better about themselves. And there was like a Likert scale that they would judge it on, and they would rate that one fairly high. And then other ones, they would say like 30% of the people that took this drug didn't improve at all. They go, oh yeah, that's not a very good drug, when that's the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
70% improved or 30% didn't improve should be rated the same, and it wasn't, because how you framed it. So I guess words do matter. How you
Yes, they
say
do.
things.
Don't say you
And
guess.
yeah.
Words matter. Words.
So anyway, it's also it's used a lot. It's been used a lot politically as well to frame some of the core things that politicians talk about by changing verbiage a little bit. So if you say, do you want to give tax breaks to people, then that's, people can say, well, that's not, everybody needs to pay their share or whatever. You can have arguments on both sides. But if you say, what about tax relief for these people? Well, who doesn't want to give people relief from something? If something's a burden and you want to relieve it, so changing it to tax relief makes it harder to argue against. Or if you say, do you want to choose life? Well, that's like, well, I don't want to choose death. Choosing life would be easier. Or even in our military, this has come up because now we have smart bombs. That doesn't sound all that bad. So we're trying to protect people. So we have smart bombs now. They only get the bad people. There might be some collateral, but smart bomb or like freedom missiles. The freedom missiles don't sound as bad, or precision strikes. So just changing how you label things can change people's perception on those things.
Yeah. So I've spent most of this episode misapplying science. So let's see if I can do it one more time. But when you were talking about research that was done on memory, I think, but there was a researcher who would say, change words and say when the red car bumped into the green car or whatever.
How fast was it going? Mm-hmm.
How fast is that? Is this the framing effect?
So yeah, so that's framing the questions to get people to see it one way or another.
I got one right.
Yeah, today. No, that's absolutely.
It took me 1 hour on the dot. My 1 hour just clicked, but I got one right.
No, that's framing, and so it's a powerful tool. And if it's a tool that works, why not use it? We should all try to use it, right? But where it's really helpful and effective is if we can challenge our own biases and our own thoughts by reframing how we look at issues that we have a stance on. So let's say you have a really strong stance on a certain issue. In privacy, when nobody's around, take the time to reframe that issue, to look at it from another angle. And then after you do that exercise, you might still hold the same beliefs, but at least now you've reframed it. It gives you, it's like, I don't want to judge something based on knowing only 10% about it. I want to know more than 10%. So in privacy, when nobody's around, I can do a little bit of research. I can reframe some of my thoughts and beliefs and look at them more broadly or from a different angle, and then see if I still have that same belief. If you do, good. If you don't, if you change your belief, that's good too, because we should always celebrate, adapting and accommodating new information and changing if it's warranted. If like research or facts point us in a new direction, we should be happy to take that new direction. And then that would be also how we look at people, how we look at places and things and all that. We can use the framing effect to challenge ourselves.
So there we go. Learned something and gave me something good.
Yeah.
Something to apply. Well, John, thank you. Like I just pointed out, I've kept you over an hour now. And so I just appreciate all the information, and we're in a good way. We're just scratching the surface of everything I want to learn about the brain. So every week I appreciate it a little bit more.
Good.
So thank you.
Yeah. Just keep flexing your brain.
I'm going to try. So that brings us to the end of another just really interesting discussion for me here on John Teaches Sean About His Brain. And I hope that, like me, you found some information today useful. You learned something new. But if you're intrigued by what you heard today and you do want to dive deeper, like John kind of did earlier, I encourage you to go back and listen to our previous episodes if you haven't, because John has done, in my estimation, a really good job of laying the groundwork for a lot of the concepts that we're discussing in these episodes. So I'll speak for John, but we're always looking to continue this journey of understanding our brains. I'm trying to learn it. John's trying to teach it to me. But if you have questions that aren't being asked about any of the topics we've covered, or if there's just more about any of these concepts you want to learn, I would ask you to connect with us on social media channels, on X, on Blue Sky, on YouTube. All the details are in the notes below, but just let us know your thoughts. Share your insights. If you have questions, ask. I wouldn't say that we would devote an entire episode to a question, but on rare occasions we might. But we're definitely, any questions we get, we try to address. So if you like this episode, tell someone close to you, tell a friend, tell a coworker, tell a family member, tell a stranger on the street. I don't know. But if you love it, tell two. And finally, if you're enjoying this podcast, you find these conversations helpful, please don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, wherever you listen to podcasts, because however it works, that will help us continue on this path. We can work together and hopefully make some more incredible discoveries. Thank you.